And in this phase I'm always reminded very strongly of the parallel that we find in the writings of Jacob Boehme, the German mystic of Görlitz. This shoemaker gives us a very interesting parallel of the relations between God and demon. Because we are carried in the allegory or in the fable out into space. And in space we find one brooding figure, standing upon a great cloud with folded wings of sable hue, a great brooding figure leaning upon a sword and standing looking out into the infinite. And this brooding figure is Satan. And this brooding figure is almost divine in its own right. For within it is not only the creative power of God, but the infinite courage and strength of the divine will. And this being has come out of the mysteries of outer space to stand before the throne of the Almighty and to offer itself as a vassal of God. And it stands there and it speaks, and it sends its voice out into the great mysterious darkness that lies about it, out towards one softly roseate cloud that seems to be hovering over the great vistas of space like some dim northern light. And the powerful angel calls out and asks God to reveal himself. And out of the cloud and out of the mystery and out of the darkness comes the voice of a baby, a very tiny child. And this voice of the child, so faint, so small, so gentle, as to hardly be audible, says, "Yes, did you wish to speak to me?" And in that moment, Satan is so completely shocked and so completely baffled that he leans upon his sword and thinks, is this voice, this child voice, this voice alone in space, is this God? And if this is God, what can we expect of divinity? Here are all the clouds, the stars, and the cosmos. Are they to be managed and directed by a small child? Where is the glorious court of heaven? Where are the choirs of the angels and the archangels and the seraphs and the cherubim? Where are the principalities and the powers and the dominions? Nothing there but the voice of a child, speaking gently in the voice of love. And Satan says to himself, I guess I'd better do something about this. This is no way to run a universe. And if this is the measure of things, I think I'd better take over. So in this moment, Satan rebels against the Lord. And in this moment, when in his mind comes the thought, I will take over, I will be the King of kings and the ruler of the world, in that instant, the heavens are shattered from edge to edge. The sky rolls back. The clouds break open. And out of this mist and darkness and out of these rosy shadows, there bursts a light that strikes upon Satan with such a tremendous power that he is cast down upon his knees. And there suddenly before him, in all of its effulgent glory, is the God of might and the God of battles. The soft voice has disappeared, and now stands all the glory of the armies of the Lord under the psychopompos of the archangel Michael. And here are the hosts of heaven in their golden armor, and an ineffable glory and an ineffable strength beyond all human understanding. And Satan cannot understand. He does not know what has happened. And the voice explains to him that when he came in gentleness and humility of speech and appeal, he was brought into the presence of the great meekness, which is God. For God is always the gentle voice to those who come in obedience. But God is always the voice that is almost impossible to hear, the childish little voice of those who obey. But the moment there comes into the mind of man arrogance, worldliness, and power, the God of meekness disappears, and there is beheld the vassals of wrath. In that instant the sky opens, and the power of the heavens is revealed, is revealed in all its glory. Not because heaven has changed, but because rebellion has changed the sight of the one who beheld it. The glory was always there, but the meek in heart see only the meekness, but the proud behold only the wrath. And this was the battle between the divine mind and the mortal mind, between the will of heaven and the will of man. And in this great battle, man by disobedience released the wrath and came under the power of the retribution of natural law. Man knows of no laws until he breaks them. Man knows of no wrath until he disobeys. Man is not aware that there is in the universe anything but beauty until he breaks the law. And this was Bamey's expression or interpretation of the rebellion and the fall of the archangel Lucifer and his hosts, and the great war in heaven. And this in substance is also the burden of the concept in Faust, because the two stories have almost identical meaning. Faust, in his original sincerity, was searching for the world of God. When he could not find it, he rebelled. And in his mental rebellion, his discouragement, his resignation to negative inevitables, he opened himself to the retribution of mortal mind. And mortal mind, or selfish mind, represented by Mephisto, becomes his servant. But mortal mind leads man only to self-destruction, leads him only to ways of darkness and evil, and finally results in his complete undoing. In the end of the first part of the play, however, this false thinking having brought Faust to the lowest pitch of tragedy, we find the revulsion taking place within himself. The revulsion which finally, through a kaleidoscopic series of circumstances, brings him back again to the recognition that the good man, even in his infirmity, will cling unto the Lord who made him be, and that he will find in the end the only answer to the whole great conflict, and that answer is simple faith, the simple acceptance of truth itself as a principle, whether he can possess it, know it, or understand it or not. The simple return to obedience. And the moment he obeys, the wrath vanishes and the power of the tempter is destroyed. So by returning to the original destiny and the nature which was his proper place in the world, the entire mystery or story is brought to its magnificent and dramatic conclusion.
Now, I know that some of you are still lost because you have no background upon which to build. You haven't listened to the many hours that we have broadcast revealing these things to you. So I'm going to read from Volume 4 of The Great Work, entitled Its Neophytes, written by Dr. R. Swinburne Clymer, M.D. And I will begin on page 193, entitled Lucifer, Satan, and the Devil. The devil, the inciter to evil, forcing man to gain experience which, contrary to the devil's intent or mission, will ultimately be his spiritual attainment. It is doubtful if there are any other three words in all sacred, arcane, esoteric, or even profane literature as confusing as are the words Lucifer, Satan, and devil. The utter confusion relative to Lucifer, Satan, and the devil is clearly indicated in the questions, all more or less alike, often asked in seminars. Quote, "If we would look upon evil and Satan as one and the same, it would appear that Satan, his mission being a holy one, would suggest to us that the inherently perfect soul must go to the devil, in common parlance, and overcome the evils that beset it. What then is the difference between Lucifer, Satan, and the devil?" Unquote. This statement is basically an error. If the term being had been used, the concept would be correct. These beings in the heavenly sphere were perfect in the sense that they knew no evil, that there was no evil in them, but they were not souls in the sense we understand, and as God in his statements concerning the sons of men indicates, because they had no experience, they possessed no consciousness as we understand it. They had not passed through the experiences of pleasure and satiation, sorrow and suffering. They had not passed through the cauldron of fire. Remember, these are the philosophers of fire, the cauldron of fire, the hell of the earth life. In effect, gone to the devil. So as to know good from evil, and by having overcome evil with good, become gods. Become gods. You see the difference when you get into the great work between what they tell the neophyte and what the truth really becomes. So as to know good from evil, and by having overcome evil with good, become gods. Lucifer, being second only to God in his power, like many of the angels, became dissatisfied with this state of being. He was dissatisfied insofar as he himself was concerned in being an inactive part in a perfect state of being. He wanted to know. He wanted to experience. This dissatisfaction could not exist in an otherwise perfect state. Hence, in biblical language, God cast him out. That is, Lucifer fell or came down with a purpose not only insofar as he himself was concerned, but concerning all others in the Elysian sphere, and all those, the angels who were of like desire, fell or came down with him. Being next to God, he had no desire to supersede God. Nevertheless, his desire was to become knowing, to lead others into the light of self-knowledge, and in descending, he became Lucifer, the light bearer, the bearer of the torch, the same torch at the apex of the obelisk in Dealey Square, the same torch that burns on the grave of President John F. Kennedy, the same torch lifted aloft by the Statue of Liberty, the same torch worn upon the breast insignia of the graduating class of St. John's High School, 1994. The same torch. The spirit of incentive in man to seek the light and become not God, but gods. And this is a direct quote from this book, The Great Work by R. Swinburne Clymer, Volume 4. Quote, "This idea God himself endorsed," unquote. These beings who descended from heaven beginning with the time that man became a conscious, thinking creature were and are the divine spark incarnate. Quote, "And man breathed in the breath of life and became a living soul," unquote. So Lucifer and the fallen angels in man, according to the great work, are the same entity. I continue. They pass through the experiences of good and evil, converting the evil into good, becoming as the gods, and returning at least for a time to that sphere they gave up when their desire caused them to fall or descend or come to earth. Lucifer symbolizes the desire which was born in or became aroused in those beings which the Bible designates as angels. They became dissatisfied or were made dissatisfied by Lucifer with their inactive state because of a lack of knowledge, not of evil. Because they had no concept of it, of the divine passions of men know, such as love, affection, kindness, and generosity. Their desire and dissatisfaction caused the divinity to cast them out. That is, give them the freedom to come to earth, incarnate in human, though as yet soulless beings, and gain experience. Perhaps, we cannot know, they did not realize the great evils into which the carnal nature of the flesh would lead them. Don't go away. I'll be right back.